Human leads alien girl through a burning fort, but human sees flames bend away from her path. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. Heat shimmered off the stone as Ethan Cole stepped through the shattered gate, the burning fort groaning under its own weight. Sparks drifted like fireflies through smoky air, brushing against his gear with soft pops. His visor fogged for a moment before clearing, giving him a glimpse of the long corridor ahead, lit only by the glow of collapsing beams. He'd seen buildings in bad shape back home, but nothing like a whole fortress giving out inch by inch. The floor radiated warmth through his boots, every breath tasting faintly of metal and dust. He moved fast but steady, one hand bracing the wall to feel for sections that might still be solid. A low tremor rolled beneath his feet, pushing a thin cloud of embers across his path. That was when he heard it, a soft, almost musical gasp coming from a corner half hidden behind fallen stone. Ethan aimed his light toward the sound. A girl sat curled against the wall, her skin a soft blue with a gentle silver sheen catching the firelight. She looked unhurt, though shaken, her eyes reflecting the orange glow like twin mirrors. She shielded her face when he approached, not from him, but from the brightness around them. "Hey," Ethan called gently, keeping his voice steady. "I'm here to get you out. Can you walk?" She blinked, surprised by the words, then slowly nodded. Her movements were delicate, like she expected the air itself to crumble at her touch. When he offered his hand, she hesitated only a second before taking it. Her skin was cool, almost soothing against the heat around them. They stepped together into the corridor, the fire whispering along the walls. Ethan kept her close, guiding her around patches where the floor sagged or the ceiling cracked. A beam dropped somewhere behind them with a hollow thud, sending echoes through the broken fortress. He glanced at her to make sure she wasn't startled, but she moved with surprising calm, watching the flames as if studying their rhythm. As they approached a narrow archway, a wave of heat rolled toward them, carrying a thick curtain of shimmering air. Ethan instinctively raised his arm to shield her. But something strange happened. The flames drifting toward her path didn't touch her. They stretched, bent, and curled away from where she stepped, parting as if pushed by an invisible current. Ethan froze mid-step, breath caught in his throat. He'd seen fire behave unpredictably before, but never like that, never with intention. The girl didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to meet his eyes when he looked at her. She only whispered, "We should keep moving," her voice soft as wind moving through glass. Ethan nodded, though his mind raced. He didn't know who she was or how the fire reacted to her presence. But the fort was still shaking, and the exit routes were fading fast. He tightened his grip on her hand, not out of fear, but out of instinct. Whatever was happening, he wasn't letting go. And the flames, impossibly, continued to slide aside for her as they made their way deeper into the collapsing fort. Ethan guided the girl through a narrow hallway where the smoke thinned just enough for his visor to pick up the outlines of fallen beams. The air pulsed with warmth, rising in waves that made the stone floor shimmer like sunlit water. Ryla stayed close, her footsteps almost silent, as if she knew exactly where the ground would hold and where it would give. The strange part was the temperature around her. While Ethan felt heat pressing against his gear, Ryla moved as if walking through a mild summer breeze. He noticed that the closer he stood beside her, the cooler the air became, something subtle but steady, like a soft current drifting outward from her presence. They reached a split in the hallway where part of the ceiling had bowed inward. A slow trickle of dust drifted down. Ethan tapped the stone with his glove, judging how long the structure might last. "If we keep left, we might reach the outer ramp," he said quietly. Ryla studied the right passage for a moment. "The wind is stronger that way," she replied, her voice calm. Ethan frowned. "There is no wind in here." She gave a small, almost apologetic smile, as if aware of how her words sounded. "I can feel the movement of warm and cool pockets. They tell me where the open spaces are." Ethan could not explain it, but something about her tone made him trust her judgment. They followed the right corridor where warm air brushed past them, pulling the smoke upward. The firelight danced against the walls in slow, curved motions, as though following a pattern only Ryla understood. As they headed deeper, the ground rumbled again. A soft, distant groan echoed overhead. Ethan steadied her as a mild vibration shook dust down like soft snow. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded. "You have been helping me without asking why," she said softly. "Most would have asked by now." Ethan shrugged lightly. "Getting out comes first. Questions later." She looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, as though kindness in a burning fort was stranger than flames bending around her path. They turned another corner and encountered a fallen archway. The stones formed a narrow gap, just wide enough for one person. Ethan stooped and checked the space. The warmth was sharp here, pushing against his visor like heated breath. When he turned to Ryla, she was already examining the archway with her hand near the stone, not touching it, just sensing. "It is safe," she whispered. "The heat here is rising evenly. Nothing is shifting." Ethan doubted any normal person could tell that, but her confidence had carried them this far. He slipped through first, brushing past rough stone and staying low. On the other side, he extended a hand, and Ryla eased through the gap with surprising grace. Just as she stood beside him, a glow flared above. A wave of warm air spilled downward, but the sparks bent in a gentle arc around her shoulders before fading into the air. Ethan felt his breath catch. It was not a one-time fluke. Whatever force surrounded her, it reacted again, unmistakably protective. Ryla kept her gaze ahead. "We are almost there," she said, but there was a faint tremor in her voice, like someone carrying a truth too heavy for the moment. Ethan adjusted his grip on her hand, grounding her. "Then we keep moving," he replied, steady and sure. The corridor brightened as they approached an opening, the firelight washing over them like the glow of a distant sunrise. And the flames, still impossibly aware of her presence, drifted aside in a slow, graceful curve as they continued forward. Ethan felt the temperature shift as they neared the wide chamber ahead, the air turning cooler in a way that did not match the glow pulsing along the walls. The fire should have been strongest here, yet the heat thinned around them, as if something unseen shaped the flow. Ryla paused just before the threshold, her eyes reflecting soft bands of orange and gold. She lifted her hand slightly, palm open toward the room, as though listening for something beyond sound. Ethan watched her face shift with quiet concentration. "Do you sense something?" he asked. Ryla hesitated. "The air moves strangely here. It feels as if everything is waiting." The way she said it sent a ripple through him, not of fear but of awareness. This girl, who walked gently and spoke softly, carried an aura the fire itself obeyed. Ethan stepped into the chamber first, scanning the ceiling and floor for anything unstable. The stone under his boots felt firm. Flickers of light danced along the walls, rising and falling in smooth arcs that seemed too rhythmic to be random. He lifted his flashlight, but even its beam curved around Ryla when she followed him inside, as if bending slightly in her direction. He blinked, unsure if the heat was playing tricks on his eyes. The room opened into a high vault, the ceiling lost behind drifting smoke. A single path led upward, a slanted ramp that curved toward the last exit tower. If they could reach it, daylight and open air were only minutes away. "That ramp should take us out," Ethan said, pointing toward the slope. Ryla nodded, but her attention stayed fixed on the shifting air currents. She walked with careful steps, each movement graceful and quiet. Ethan noticed again how the temperature dipped whenever he drew close to her, a gentle coolness that gave him a moment of relief from the heat. Halfway up the incline, a soft rumble fluttered underfoot. Ethan steadied himself. "It is just settling," he said, though he was not entirely sure. Ryla touched the wall with her fingertips, barely grazing the warm stone. "It is not falling," she murmured. "The heat is lifting upward. That means there is an opening ahead." Ethan stared at her for a second. She spoke about heat the way a musician might speak about notes. "Ryla," he said carefully, "how do you know all this?" She kept walking but lowered her gaze. "My people feel temperature like others feel sound. It guides us. It always has." Ethan thought of the flames bending away from her. He wanted to press for more, but her quiet posture told him that speaking was already a heavy step for her. As they neared the top of the ramp, A glow washed toward them, bright but not harsh. It reminded Ethan of sunlight through thin curtains, warm without burning. Ryla inhaled softly, her expression shifting with something like relief. "Fresh air," she whispered. Ethan checked the final stretch. The exit arch had cracked, but still held strong. Beyond it, he could see daylight filtering through drifting dust. "We are almost out," he said, his voice warming. Ryla met his eyes with a gentle expression, a mixture of trust and something deeper, something unspoken. They stepped through the arch together, and as they did, the glow behind them softened. Ethan turned once, watching how the flames in the vast chamber curved in slow, graceful lines away from the path they had taken, as if acknowledging her passage. Ryla stood beside him, the soft breeze touching her silver-blue skin with a shimmer that looked almost like starlight. Ethan realized then that whatever had guided the flames, whatever lived quietly within her, was far more powerful than she allowed herself to admit. The breeze outside the fort carried the faint scent of damp earth, a welcome contrast to the warm air they had escaped. Ethan stepped onto the open platform, feeling the ground vibrate lightly beneath his boots as the structure continued to settle behind them. The sky above was muted by drifting smoke, but patches of blue showed through, turning the scene into a blend of haze and soft daylight. Ryla took a slow breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since he had found her inside. Her silver-blue skin caught the sunlight in delicate bands, like reflections dancing on calm water. Ethan watched her study the valley below, where pockets of warm air shimmered above the ground. It looked peaceful compared to the burning interior of the fort, yet he could sense her attention was fixed on something deeper. "You felt the heat currents even out back there," he said quietly. "Can you still feel them out here?" Ryla nodded. "The air is calmer. It is easier to listen now." Her voice carried a steadiness he had not heard before, as though the open space gave her room to breathe in ways the stone corridors could not. Ethan walked to the edge of the platform and checked the slope that led down the hillside. Long paths wound through patches of rock and low brush. They looked like they could hold their weight, though the loose dirt suggested the descent might be unsteady. "We should make our way down," he said. "There might be shade near the ridge." Ryla stepped beside him, her gaze sweeping the slope. "The warm air gathers most strongly on the left. The ground might be softer there." Ethan considered her words, then chose the route to the right where the soil looked firmer. Ryla followed without question, though she kept glancing toward the warmer side, as if the air currents whispered warnings he could not hear. As they descended, the wind picked up slightly, brushing dust from the rocks. Ethan slowed his pace to match hers, though she walked with surprising steadiness. Her balance was graceful, every movement smooth and careful. At one point, the loose soil shifted beneath his boot. Before he could adjust, Ryla reached out with light pressure on his arm, guiding him toward firmer ground. The gesture was simple, but it startled him with its precision. "How did you know the soil would slide?" he asked. "The warmth beneath it changed," she replied. "It rose quickly. That means the ground is thinner." Ethan blinked, impressed despite the fatigue settling through him. "That is not something most people can notice." Ryla lowered her gaze. "It is something my people are taught to ignore. It is considered unusual." Ethan sensed the weight in her tone, a quiet admission she did not often share. They continued their descent, the valley opening wider as they approached the halfway point. Warm gusts drifted through the canyon, twisting gently around Ryla before thinning into the breeze. Ethan paused for a moment and watched how the air shaped itself around her, bending not dramatically but subtly, as if the currents responded to her presence with familiar ease. "Ryla," he said softly, "back there inside the fort, the flames moved away from you. That was not the heat shifting. That was something else." She stopped. Her eyes, usually serene, reflected a flicker of uncertainty. For a moment, she seemed to search for words, but found none that fully carried the truth she held. "I did not make the flames move," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "They moved because they recognized me." Ethan did not fully understand what that meant, but he felt the honesty in her tone. The wind brushed past them, cooler now, stirring the air between them with calm intention. "Whatever it is," he said, steady and sure, "you are safe with me." Ryla's expression softened, the tension in her features fading. She turned toward the ridge where the path leveled. Together they continued their descent, the quiet breeze shaping a gentle current that followed them down the mountainside. By the time Ethan and Ryla reached the ridge, the sun had begun its slow descent, casting long soft beams through the settling haze. The light took on a warm golden quality, filtering across the valley as though trying to soothe the world after the tension of the burning fort. Ethan guided Ryla toward a cluster of rocks shaped by wind and time, their surfaces smooth and cool beneath the touch. Here, the breeze gathered gently, rustling sparse brush and carrying the faint scent of minerals rising from the earth. They stopped beneath the partial shade of an overhanging ledge. Ethan lowered his pack, listening to the quiet hum of the distant wind turbines stationed miles away on the far side of the valley. Ryla stepped toward the ledge and placed her hand against the stone, her expression thoughtful. "The air is steady here," she murmured. "It will hold while we rest." Ethan sat on the ground, leaning his back against a smooth section of rock. He removed one glove to wipe a line of sweat from his brow. The heat of the day clung to the valley floor, but near Ryla the temperature softened once again, drifting into a gentle coolness that made the moment feel calm and strangely comforting. Ryla sat beside him, her posture graceful despite the long escape they had endured. "You said earlier that the flames moved because they recognized you," Ethan said. "How can fire recognize?" "Anything." Ryla folded her hands in her lap, studying the shifting shadows. "My people are born with a sense of heat. It lives inside us from the start. We read it, shape it, and in rare cases, it responds to us." Ethan considered that. "So you can control fire." She shook her head softly. "Not control. It is more like understanding. The way someone can hear a melody and know where it will go next. My connection is simply stronger than most." Ethan watched her in the golden light, the silver sheen on her skin shimmering like a faint reflection of the sky. "Is that why you were in the fort?" he asked. "Were you trying to help?" Ryla lowered her gaze. "I was trying to stop something." Her voice thinned slightly, as if she feared the words might reshape themselves into truths she was not ready to share. The heat inside the fort was rising in a pattern that did not feel natural. "I thought I could calm it, but I was not strong enough. That is when the structure began to fail, and I could not find the path out." Ethan nodded slowly. Anyone in that situation would be scared. Ryla looked at him, her expression gentle but earnest. "I was not afraid of the fire," she whispered. "I was afraid of what it might show about me." The admission hung in the air, soft but heavy. Ethan let the silence settle, giving the moment space. A warm gust drifted across the ridge, but near Ryla it curved around them in a smooth line, like a current acknowledging her presence. She watched the movement with quiet attention. "Does it bother you?" she asked. "The way the air reacts to me?" Ethan shook his head. "It just means you are different." Different is not something to fear. Ryla exhaled slowly, as though releasing a weight she had carried for far too long. The sky above shifted to a deeper orange, painting the valley in warm tones. Ethan glanced at the horizon. "We should head toward the lower path soon," he said. "We can reach the old observation post before nightfall. The metal walls should still stand." Ryla rose with him, lightly brushing dust from her hands. The wind gathered behind them, shaping a soft trail that followed their steps. As they continued along the ridge, Ethan felt that quiet current moving with them, as if the air itself walked beside her, loyal and attentive in ways he was only beginning to understand. The path along the ridge wound gently downward, the surface packed firm by years of wind and weather. Ethan kept a steady pace, matching his stride to Ryla's lighter steps. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky into a blend of soft amber and pale lavender. Shadows stretched long across the valley, but the air around them held a warm, steady glow that seemed to follow Ryla as naturally as her own shadow. The observation post stood ahead, a small metal structure built into the hillside. Its outer panels had dulled with age, but its frame looked intact. Ethan pointed toward it. "We can rest there before nightfall." Ryla's gaze lingered on the building. "The metal holds heat," she said quietly. "It may be warm inside." Ethan smiled. "After the day we have had, warm sounds pretty good." As they approached the post, the wind shifted. A soft current moved past them, almost like a quiet greeting. Ryla paused just before the doorway, her hand hovering an inch above the surface of the metal wall. "The inside is calm," she murmured. "The air is not trapped." It will be safe. Ethan pushed the door open with a gentle shove. It swung inward with a low creak, revealing a single room with a narrow bench, an old equipment console, and a small window that overlooked the entire valley. Dust clung to the corners, but the space felt stable. Ryla stepped inside, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. Ethan set his pack down and tapped the console lightly. It flickered but did not turn on. "Power is gone," he said, "but the structure is still solid." Ryla lowered herself onto the bench, folding her hands neatly in her lap. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of air shifting outside the window. Ethan leaned against the opposite wall, watching her quietly. The warmth in the room softened around her presence, not harsh but gentle, like heat remembering to be kind. "When you said you were afraid of what the fire might show," Ethan asked, "did you mean others would see what you can do?" Ryla's expression tightened with a quiet honesty. "My people do not reveal their abilities freely. We understand heat, but the stronger. Connections like mine are rare. Some believe they should be hidden. Some believe they should be controlled." Ethan nodded slowly. "And what do you believe?" Ryla looked toward the window, her silver blue skin reflecting the fading light. "I believe understanding something does not mean it should be feared, but not everyone agrees." Ethan considered her words. The calm air inside the post shifted gently around them, moving with a slow rhythm that made the space feel alive. "Ryla," he said, "whatever you can do, whatever it means, it does not change how I see you." She glanced at him, her expression softening. "You say that so easily." "It feels true," Ethan replied. "Simple things usually are." A quiet moment settled between them, filled with nothing more than the whisper of the wind and the soft glow of the setting sun. Ryla drew a slow breath, as if letting go of something long held. "You trust me," she said, not as a question but as a realization. Ethan nodded. "I do." For the first time, Ryla's smile reached her eyes, a gentle curve filled with gratitude more than anything else. She lifted her hand slightly, and the warm air in the room spiraled in a small, graceful motion before settling again. "The air listens more clearly at night," she said. "It tells me the ground will cool soon. We will be safe here until morning." Ethan glanced toward the darkening horizon. "Then we stay," he said calmly. Ryla shifted on the bench, her posture relaxing fully for the first time since he had found her. Outside, the last of the sunlight faded, and the air grew cooler. Yet inside the post, a soft and steady warmth remained, as if choosing to stay close to her. Night settled over the valley in a slow, velvety hush, softening the horizon and dimming the last traces of daylight. Inside the observation post, the air remained warm and steady around Ryla, as though the room itself recognized her presence and adjusted out of quiet respect. Ethan sat near the window, watching the darkness thicken across the landscape. He could just make out the faint glow from the dying fires inside the fort far above, flickering like distant lanterns behind a wall of drifting smoke. Ryla had her eyes closed, listening to the subtle movement of air beyond the metal walls. Her posture was calm, but Ethan sensed something coiled beneath the surface, a quiet tension she had not spoken aloud. "You are listening again," Ethan said softly. Ryla opened her eyes, the silver in them catching the faint starlight. "The wind is shifting. It carries a message from the ridge." Ethan straightened slightly. "What kind of message?" Ryla took a slow breath. "Something is moving against the warm currents. It is creating pressure where there should be none." Ethan did not hear anything, but he had learned not to doubt her senses. He stood and stepped beside her. "Is it dangerous?" She hesitated. "It is unusual, and unusual things often come with risk." A low hum vibrated through the post, so faint Ethan almost missed it. Ryla stood, turning toward the door. "The air wants to leave," she whispered. "It is preparing for something." Ethan felt a mild chill brush past him, even though the interior remained warm. The subtle shift raised the hairs on his arms. "Ryla," he said carefully, "stay close to me." Before she could respond, a stronger gust pushed against the post, rattling the window frame. It was not harsh, but deliberate, like a warning knock. Ryla stepped forward and touched the wall with her fingertips. "The pressure is building outside," she murmured. "Something is trying to push the warm air upward." Ethan moved closer. "Can you tell what it is?" Ryla's breath trembled, just slightly. "It feels like heat, but not from the fort. It is moving through the valley." Ethan looked out the window. The darkness made the valley appear still, but when he focused, he saw faint specks of glowing particles drifting above the brush, shimmering like small embers carried on the wind. "Ryla," he said, "those lights. Do they mean anything to you?" She stepped beside him, eyes wide in recognition. "Heat threads," she whispered. "They gather when something powerful stirs the air. Something with enough force to alter the entire current." Ethan kept his voice steady. "Is it following us?" Ryla closed her eyes, letting the warmth beneath her skin reach outward. The air in the post swirled gently, responding to her connection. When she opened her eyes again, her expression had changed. Not fear. Something heavier. "It is searching for me," she said softly. Ethan took a slow breath. "Then we need to be ready." Ryla looked at him, the warm light around her intensifying. "By a fraction. You should not stand between me and what comes." "I will stand where I choose," Ethan replied calmly. A quiet ripple moved through the warm air, circling them as though acknowledging his words. Outside, the glowing particles drifted closer, forming slow spirals in the night sky. The valley, once quiet, now felt alive with anticipation. And in the stillness that followed, Ethan understood that whatever had shaped the fire inside the fort had not been finished with Ryla. It had just begun to find her. The glowing particles drifted closer, swirling above the valley in slow, deliberate spirals that painted the night sky in faint amber tones. Ethan watched from the window, his breath steady, though his pulse tightened with each shimmering arc. The lights did not flicker like ordinary embers. They moved with purpose, gathering into patterns that mirrored the heat currents Ryla sensed so easily. Ryla stepped forward until she stood at the center of the room. The warm air gathered around her ankles, lifting in gentle motions as if welcoming her attention. "It knows where I am now," she whispered. Ethan turned toward her. "What exactly is coming?" Ryla hesitated, the silver in her eyes deepening. "A sentinel, a being shaped from heat and air. It is not alive in the way you think, but it carries the will of those who created it." Ethan frowned. "Created it for what?" "To find people like me," she said softly. "Those who can influence fire or sense heat in uncommon ways. The sentinel brings them home." Ethan absorbed her words. The glowing spirals descending through the valley, the shifting air, the quiet tremors of warmth pressing gently against the post walls. They all felt like pieces of a story she had carried alone. "Do you want to be taken back?" he asked. Ryla looked at him, her expression solemn. "I left because I did not agree with how my people used our abilities. They wanted us to shape fire for purposes that did not align with what I believed. I wanted peace. I wanted choice." Ethan nodded slowly. "So this sentinel is here to bring you back against your will." Ryla lowered her gaze. "It does not understand will. It understands purpose. If it finds me, it will guide the heat around me, surrounding me until I have no path but the one it opens." The warm air inside the post pulsed lightly, as though echoing the sentinel's distant approach. Ethan moved closer. "Then what do we do?" Ryla touched the wall beside her, feeling the faint vibration. "The sentinel reads the world through warmth. It sees heat the way you see light. It will come to this post because it senses the stability of the air around us." Ethan glanced toward the dim console. "Is there any way to hide you?" "Not hide," she murmured. "But I can speak to it. I can try to tell it that I am not to be taken. It may not understand, but it will notice my intent." Ethan examined her carefully. "Will that be safe?" Ryla lifted her head, the warm glow around her intensifying slightly. "Safe is not certain, but choice matters more than certainty." A soft hum vibrated under the floor. Outside, the glowing particles shifted into a column of light that descended slowly from the ridge as if tethered to the sentinel's arrival. Ethan stepped beside her. "You will not face it alone." Ryla gave a small, grateful exhale. "The sentinel will sense you too," she warned gently. "Warm bodies change the currents. It may interpret your presence as interference." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then I will interfere carefully." The light outside grew brighter, spreading across the valley like the first signs of dawn. Ryla lifted her hands, palms open, allowing the warm currents inside the post to gather. The air shaped itself in elegant spirals around her wrists, flowing like soft ribbons of heat. She closed her eyes, centering her breath. For the first time, Ethan saw not fear in her posture but a quiet, resolute strength. The Sentinel was coming, drawn by the very heat that flowed through her. And she was ready to step forward, not as someone hiding from her nature, but as someone meeting it with clarity. The air around them waited, still and expectant, preparing for the moment when the night itself would answer her call. The column of warm light drifted toward the observation post with a steady, deliberate motion, spreading across the valley floor like a rising tide. Ethan felt the air shift before the glow reached them, a gentle pressure that rolled beneath his feet and pressed softly against the metal walls. It did not feel hostile, only certain, as if following a path laid out long before. Either of them arrived. Ryla stepped to the doorway, her posture calm, yet resolute, the warm currents spiraling slowly around her arms. The glow outside brightened, revealing the Sentinel as it took shape. It did not form a body, not in the human sense. Instead, the air shimmered into a tall column of drifting particles, swirling in elegant patterns that pulsed with warmth. The Sentinel hovered several feet from the entrance, suspended above the valley floor as though it had no need for ground at all. Ryla lifted her chin slightly, acknowledging its presence. "It hears my breath," she whispered, "and my fear, and my hope." Ethan stood just behind her, close enough for her to sense his steadiness, but far enough to give her the space she needed. The Sentinel's glow pulsed once, sending a wave of warm air through the doorway. Dust lifted gently from the ground, rising in smooth arcs that curved around Ryla like petals swept into a graceful dance. She stepped forward, letting the warm light wash over her hands. "I am not returning," she said quietly, though her voice carried weight in the warmth. "I choose my path." The Sentinel responded with a subtle shift. Its spiraling currents slowed, observing her with silent patience. Ryla closed her eyes, drawing a long breath. The warm air in the room flowed outward, gathering into a soft shimmer around her. "I am not refusing my people," she murmured. "I am learning who I am away from their expectations." The Sentinel's glow rippled, brighter in one moment, dimmer in the next, as if considering her intent. Ethan watched, unsure if the being understood language or only the pattern of her energy, the unspoken shape of her decisions. Ryla lifted her hands higher. The flames she once feared revealing became gentle streaks of warm light that curled around her palms, not burning, only illuminating. The Sentinel responded with a wave of heat that rose straight into the sky, forming a narrow pillar of light like a beacon. The valley glowed softly beneath it, warmed without harm. Ethan felt the shift instantly. The Sentinel had not come to capture her. It had come to understand her. And what it found was someone standing in her truth, without trembling. The pillar of light slowly thinned, the drifting particles rising like tiny lanterns released into the night. One by one, they ascended, until the valley held only a faint dusting of warmth lingering in the air. Ryla lowered her hands, her breath shaking with quiet relief. The Sentinel's glow dimmed to a soft, golden hue before finally dissolving into the night sky, leaving only stillness behind. Ethan stepped beside her. "It listened to you," he said softly. Ryla nodded, her expression gentle, touched with wonder. "It recognized my choice. That has never happened before." The night breeze drifted through the observation post, cool and quiet, swirling once around Ryla, as if acknowledging her freedom. She turned toward Ethan, the starlight catching the silver sheen of her skin. "Thank you," she whispered, "for standing with me when you did not have to." Ethan met her gaze, the soft glow of the valley reflecting in his eyes. "You did not need me to stand in front," he said. "Just beside." Ryla smiled, small but true, and for a moment the world held a gentle calm that felt like the start of something new. The night settled fully then, and in the quiet glow of cooling earth and lingering warmth, the air wrapped softly around her, not as a summons, but as a companion honoring her chosen path.